season has been brought to you by Radisson Red, Johannesburg, Rosebank. Style you can bank on. Great day, everyone. Ed Dudley, Durham, North Carolina, and it's pouring raining outside, and we watched the weather drop from 90s to the 70s, and I'm loving it. I'm absolutely loving it. Yeah, but today's Friday, and on Fridays, what do I get to do? I get to hang out with my one and only approved, sanctioned girlfriend sitting over in South Africa. Miss Charmaine, how are you?
I'm fabulous, Zuluette. So looking forward to this exciting conversation. I love the rain, by the way. Yeah. It's so refreshing.
But see, the problem with the rain, if I go outside, it messes up my hair. So
I have no problem. It just goes crazy.
But yeah, it's Friday, and I'm always excited to be in this space with you and just share, talk, laugh, learn, inspire. We've had some amazing guests from across the world come and just spend some time with us and share their stories and what they got going on, what they're doing. And we have another amazing guest that is going to grace us. And we were laughing off camera a little bit because the gentleman's an actuary. And if any of you know what actuaries are, they're typically very stoic. They're very conservative. And I had to check back on his LinkedIn to make sure he was really an actuary.
Oh, Ed, be kind to him. Besides being an actuary, is a chartered financial analyst, certified planner.
Yeah.
And the reason I say be kind to him, because he doesn't fit the box, does he?
At all. So let's just bring in Mr. Trevor John, this amazing man we're talking about. Hey, sir, how you doing?
I'm very well. Good to be here.
Oh, welcome to... Oh, sorry, I need to stop laughing, Trevor. I need to focus because this man gives me a hard time. So I just want to say, welcome to the Ubuntu House. We're extremely excited to have you here because besides being a financial professional, you're just an incredible human being. I need to say that. But more importantly, Ed, I think he's an outlier. And the reason I'm going to make this bold statement is I'm going to prefix it with a question to you. What percentage of men do you know have taken their wife's surname after marriage?
Wait a minute. Hold up. Wait a minute. Hold on. Wait a minute. Mr. John, is that true?
John is my wife's surname. Well, it's my surname now too. That's it's not my surname of birth. I was born black.
Wow. Okay, so let's talk about that for a minute. No, because I don't know any man that's ever done that.
So my point. That is an outlier?
That's complete outlier. I want to talk about that. So first of all, tell the people who you are. Share any little story that you want, but I definitely want to know more about that one. First of all, I don't want my wife to listen to this. It's too late.
It caught me by surprise the first time I even thought about it. I must admit, there's a lot of questions when you get asked for the first time and you realize it's not even something I had entertained. Who I am is a big question too. I don't know. I guess I'm discovering that, unpacking the things that's I don't want to be a part of either. I like the Bruce Lee quote where you kind of take what's useful, discard what's not, and add what's uniquely your own. So for me, who I am is an ongoing question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. ever
But
evolving.
that's not a very good answer.
No, no, no.
It's
It's an honest answer. I mean, a lot of us are ever evolving. I tell people I'm not the same person that I was 10 years, 5 years ago, even a year ago. I'm ever evolving. I hope I'm evolving into something much better and a better human being, a better person, a better husband, better father. But we're always evolving. So love it. So, Mr. John, talk to us about that whole thought process. How did it cross your mind? But more importantly, what did your wife think? And I know you have brownie points for the rest of your life because you did that. Because I know I would.
Look, she
But
I think I think she quite like deflects the question sometimes when asked is like say like she didn't force it on me or anything like that. I grew up sort of a feminist, and my mom and various women were very strong people in my life, and it sort of bothered me a little bit that a number of the feminists in my life, when it got to getting married, they fought, and then took their husband's surnames, because it's the one thing more generally is realizing where you are is not the right place you want to be, and actually describing a different world and a path to it are quite different things. And a lot of the time we end up having to make peace with how to get somewhere, whether it's in your head or not. And I guess, look, I've overthought this question, and it probably would have depended who you meet. A lot of life is path dependent. It's a little bit of a poke of fun. I don't like making too big a deal of it because I don't, you don't want your name to be a big political statement. And look, looking at me, I don't fit into a lot of categories where of underprivileged, or sort of being a representative, or like unfair representative for something, being a sort of white male English speaking. I'm sort of textbook privilege, but it's one of those ways of just poking a little bit of fun at the way we do things. A name is more than just fun, so I don't like describing it that way. Uh, but yeah, it is a talking point. It does give me some sort of insight into the admin or the difficulty of actually changing your name. There's a lot of things when you go down this path that it opens up different questions. But yes, my the one question Charmaine asked me was it because I didn't like my first surname, and actually my dad asked me that too, and I had to have a little bit of defense from it. It wasn't so much my wife, but my dad who was not all that pleased. But I come back with the question: have you watched Reservoir Dogs? Because in Reservoir Dogs, there's Mr. Pink and Mr. Yellow and all of these, and no one's Mr. Black because
yep.
they don't want to cause fight. Because Mr. Black is the coolest surname you could possibly have. So that was my surname that I had. And so to pass up Mr. Black was certainly not because it wasn't a cool name. You don't get a
Yeah.
better surname than that.
Yeah.
I
I
agree with
love it.
you.
I think it's beautiful. And you're the first person I've ever man. It just shows that one is you don't have an ego, because a lot of us men have these monstrous egos. I would never do that. No, I'm the man, but that's absolutely beautiful. I commend you for doing that, and trust me, if you don't say anything else on here that I remember, I'll definitely remember that. No, because it's beautiful.
I
It's different. It's
I
different
I think it's more than not just having an ego. I think it's
mm,
somebody that's completely confident
in
in his
himself.
entire being,
Yeah,
and not fitting anyone's box is refreshing. I mean, that's why we have an actuary on the screen today, because of the refreshness and uniqueness of thought and ideas and wisdom and words and the way you land your messages. I'm intrigued by your on multiple levels, because you don't just speak about investments because you're an actuary, you speak about life in your writing, and endurance and creativity and resilience. How many actuaries actually speak about that, Ed? No, not many. So let's dive into this conversation. So I know I was tempted to say John, Trev. You speak on multiple levels, right? And you have a very special relationship with money and investments, the way you speak about it right now. I need to ask you, what was your relationship with money as a kid? And how has that changed now, and why do you speak so, I want to say, refreshingly about investments and money and life?
Look, I mean, I always start with that question actually, because also in terms of asking someone how they did pocket money or something like that, because the interesting thing with money is it's not a thing, it's a story, right? It's a
Mhm.
placeholder, it's a form of communication, it's a box we use, it's a tool we use to get things done. It's not something in itself. So it's actually quite an abstract concept. And you would think it's one of those things that you could study and then suddenly there's an answer. But it's not engineering, it's not medicine, it's not like everyone who studied money now agrees on what it is. And interestingly, you say like sort of actuaries being these heady people. Uh, Money conversations are often more about emotions. And
Yeah.
I often think the best financial planners would be people who study psychology, or even like even you know religious leaders or spiritual leaders,
Behavioral
because you're
finance.
getting deep into the kind of uncomfortable things. And yeah, a lot of that comes from me growing up. I mean, you have to realize that the way we see the world is based on what we've seen and where we come from,
Oh,
and
yeah.
that's the only way we can see, because we interpret things. So in my mind, I didn't grow up with money. Now I'm embarrassed to say that now, because when I look back relative to other people and the kind of context I'm able to put it in, that's not true, but it's the way I felt. And I grew up in apartheid South Africa. I was 14 when apartheid ended. Other kind of cornerstone events of mine was my parents' divorce, and various other things that happened in my teenage years. And I didn't feel empowered, you know.
Hmm.
And when I left school, I had two older brothers, and they were still at university. So I took a couple of gap years between school and university. And you know, in retrospect, I used my privilege to get the a 2-year working visa, and I went and worked in the UK for 2 years as an assistant teacher. And that was partly to not put financial strain, or I didn't know what I wanted to do. I kind of liked doing everything, so I couldn't narrow it down. And kind of the thoughts were teaching or architecture, but I went over to be an assistant teacher. And while I was there, I was getting paid £100 a week. I was, board and lodging. But I was saving that money. So, like, I still wasn't spending it. There was a 9-week school holiday where I, got a second job as a porter and a waiter. It was before minimum wage. So I was earning £2.75 an hour. I think the minimum wage now is £9 an hour. Cycling on my bike to the the restaurant hotel to do the work, and then coming back. I worked as a night porter for 2 weeks, and it was a lonely period. I was by myself, like in this empty school building over the summer holidays. And this is pre-internet days, when it was like too expensive to phone back to South Africa. And saving up money that eventually I had some money to bring back with me to when I started university. And I also went on a Contiki tour, which was absolutely fantastic. But I remember sitting on a bench in Kensington Gardens in London and just feeling overwhelmed, because I'd had enough money to go to London to get my visa sorted out for this Contiki holiday. And I'd worked out like what I needed for each kind of day of the holiday. And I didn't really have enough. And it was the real, it was what I
Oh,
really wanted to do. And I just felt overwhelmed. And I was sitting there going, you're good at maths, like do something with that. Like there's these jobs that, like, I'd been reading about different careers, and I'd seen like basically there's people who literally pay for you to go to university, and you're assured of a job, and they say basically like money will be sorted. Like, you don't want to do it, but just do it, and then you'll be able to do other things you want to do. So like, I'm quite grateful. You go back to what an actuary is and what they have to go through to become an actuary. Like, I'm amazed at these youngsters that are going through it. It's a hard period of time, and I'm very grateful to young Trev that did that, because like now it strikes the fear of God into me. But thank goodness to 18-year-old Trev for being so pragmatic. Sorry, I could go on diatribes and then like, oh dear.
Oh,
Long
yeah.
pause.
Please help.
This is the dilemma I have though. Like I tell these Trevor stories, and I never know whether people are laughing at me or with me. Like I just won this award at work for the punny award, and I wasn't quite sure whether it was because I was laughing at me or with me. Anyway.
Sorry.
You got her tickled today. I don't know if I've ever seen Charmaine laugh this hard on a show.
I have to say, I'm not laughing at you. I just love your perspective. I love the way you tell your story. And like 18-year-old Trev, you're still the
That was a
same
funny
Trev. You're
guy.
just old.
That 18-year-old Trev was a bit of a weirdo. Like I promise you, one of the problems I'm much better at being teased now than I was when I was younger. I took a lot of I was good value as a schoolboy. Like you could poke me and you would get a rise. Like I've got a bit of a chip on my shoulder, sort of like a righteous indignation chip. And I think that there's certain people who wanted to get a rise out of someone. I was always quite good value.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That was I
Yes,
love the
ma'am.
share. Thank you. Thank you for taking us through your journey. So it kind of sets the scene as to your money journey and where you are at the moment, right? And so you came back, studied actuarial science, is it?
Yes.
But Old
So
Mutual would have paid for that, didn't they? No, I'm
they
joking.
did. No, they did.
So,
So I was
yeah.
on the bursary program, and actually that Kontiki tour I was talking about, I was in the middle of it at one stage, and like I got a call, and I was looking through my emails actually, and it turns out it was Ian Williamson, who's now the chief executive officer, was the one
CEO,
emailing
yeah.
me to say you've got to come home for like an interview, and I just spent a year and a half saving for this thing, so I actually decided to. With some of the money that I saved, I would make a plan and get through the first year. But basically, Old Mutual paid for me for the rest, and then I worked for them for a year and a half for each year that they paid for me for university.
Okay, fabulous. The point I was making is like the money that you saved, you didn't actually have to utilize it for your education. So that was great, though. So I need to learn more about you. Come on, Trev. People need to hear your stories about money and why you are so intentional about building financial breathing space, especially in the environment we actually live in at the moment. Some people may deem this conversation as us being tone deaf because of the unemployment rate and because of the crisis we find ourselves in. But the importance of building these behavioral habits to give one
Well, that's
breathing
something. I mean,
space. Just,
yeah. On that point of tone deaf, I mean, it's something that I wrestle with constantly. It's like I don't know if you've I'm gonna get his name wrong. The lobsters books about lobsters, but there's a writer who also wrote a book about Roger Federer as a religious experience. An incredible writer, but he David Foster Wallace, and he wrestled with that question of, as a writer, you kind of want to share your experiences, and that balance of coming out as overconfident or knowing everything, or you have to open yourself up. And this is a sad story because he kind of like actually ended up taking his own life. And that kind of wrestle, that torment that a lot of people don't necessarily always share. And even if you do share, you feel like, do you have the right to share? So, even when I stopped working, so I got to the point in my career where I felt like I had enough money to live simply, because the things that I valued were conversations, these kind of conversations, writing. And so I stopped altogether. And then in my writing experience, like, it was one of these things of like, I'm pretty disconnected from everybody I'm writing for, because I'm not grappling with these things. And some of my ideas, like the one that I sort of went through first, is if you save half of everything you ever earn and you invest it for 15 years and you're able to get 5% return on it, you'll never have to work again. But that concept of 50% for 15 years, 5%, is so foreign from most people. how on earth can you save 50% of what you're earning? You know, is the starting point. Most people, including rich people, and this is to the point you were talking about, spend everything they earn. Doesn't matter how much it is. Almost all of us live hand to mouth and don't build capital. So when you come out there and you start talking about building capital, resilience, endurance, these things that I hammer on, and I mean, there's themes in what I write about, and I just hammer.
I love that.
It's quite, it is hard. Like coming from a South African perspective, you know, I can still remember some stories of the first time I was exposed, like really exposed to the inequalities of South Africa, and still feeling, and being honest, as a white English speaking male, and really being aware that normally we have a microphone. Everybody gives us the microphone. And so you say, like, should I be using this opportunity? I mean, even in a corporate space, you know, the big dilemma is you want to see transformation in South Africa. So I apply for a job. Maybe the best thing that I could do is just not apply for the job, you know, step aside. So these are really hard questions to wrestle with. And in what I'm trying to do is still, I want to have, I do want to have an influence on, or an understanding of the wrestles people are going through, and understand that their wrestles are not my wrestles, and that I don't actually have an answer for them. They are the best place to have an answer. So that's why I'm so obsessed with questions and coming at it from different angles, because there is not a one size fits all solution, but I feel like there's some general concepts that can help everybody, even if I don't know your story.
Oh, absolutely. I subscribe to the fact that there are some general concepts that can actually help. What I find appealing about your posts, Trev, is the fact that you plant seeds for people to consider and also demonstrate what is possible if they apply some of the knowledge or your experiences that you actually share. I mean, I don't do it as actively as you do, but I also speak about building capital. And it is possible, no matter how much you earn, to be able to build and cultivate those habits that will get you to a point where you could give up your job and just write and have the option of choice. But it takes time, and people want overnight
Yeah.
success and don't really want to apply the principle. Like, you know, talking about knowledge is power, right? We often say knowledge is power. What is
Yes,
knowledge?
yes.
As an educator, you share, you impart, and people absorb, use it to benefit themselves. And oh no, let me ask you the question. How do you connect with the concept knowledge is power? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, I guess it is like I wrestle with that concept of power. So in my version of, you know, a great world would be where decision making is everybody's able to have agency, and they're empowered to make
Yeah,
decisions and make agreements, because the reality is our decisions are not, we're not in islands. We do have impacts on
sure.
other people, and so you have to build this up. But you know, knowledge is power would probably trigger for me kind of what we're talking about: boxes, categories. Everything has to happen inside boxes. It's the way we understand, it's the way we build capital, it's the way we build our lives. But you want to be conscious about those boxes. And I guess one of the what that triggers for me really is this idea of meritocracy. And I always say it's sort of meritocracy divided by privilege is one, roughly. Because, you know, like it's the denominator, whatever you've got. And if you wanted meritocracy to work properly, like pure meritocracy, there would be full transparency. Everybody would have the same knowledge, the same, it would move so quickly that like the best person would always get everything. So it would, you know, we would never be able to hold anything. It would all just be moving, it would all be formless. And so, you know, knowledge without transparency is power, sure, because you now controlling other people's decisions and you having an impact on them. So I guess yeah, I'm going off on multiple directions here, but knowledge is power in the way that it's contained. If it's separate, if it's not shared, if there's barriers, you can. But then again, as I was saying that, like in the same way as I kind of accept the way money works, I think you have to accept that you do actually need shape and form to build anything of value, and so whatever we do and whatever life we build, we want to both create boxes or containers that serve us, but also hold them lightly and realizing that they don't define us. So I also hammer, one of the things I always hammer away at is price is not value, salary is not worth, you're not your job. These are all
Absolutely.
things, these are all
Exactly.
tools, but they're all temporary tools. They're all things that should not, they will pass. And you've got to make sure you don't never put at risk anything that really matters for something that doesn't matter. And a lot of our tools are temporary tools. And knowledge is one of those temporary tools, because knowledge evolves. You never get to the. I always remember, and I'm a yoga teacher, and I remember a guy saying to me,
Actually, that's a yoga teacher.
I've finished yoga, he said. I was like, what does that even mean? I've completed yoga. Like, I've finished knowledge. I've finished the internet.
And this is where you ask questions.
I'm enjoying
my daughter goes, like, one of her first words, she's 15 months old, and she goes, one of her first words is Pelile, finished. Pelile. Knowledge finished. Pelile.
Oh man.
I'm a perpetual learner. I flip
Yeah.
and learn every day, even through this conversation. So it's
Always.
intentional. So
So one of the things that I want to ask you, because it intrigues me, you're a student of universal basic income. And I'd love for you to talk a little more about that, why you're a student of it. Why does that resonate with you? I know why it resonates with me, but I'd love for you to share um, why universal basic income.
So, yeah, I mean, it's on this journey that I went on. So when I stopped working in 2014, to my original sort of idea was to focus on happiness and learning, really. And my first project that I sort of came up with this idea of the first 100 hours. So we're on parallel kind of paths, and life evolves, and sometimes we don't have full agency because you just end up where you are because of what happened to you. And so you made choices, but largely life happens to you rather than you sort of living life. And in my first sort of 18 months of grappling with these questions, I kind of came to the conclusion that most of my friends in my bubble are kind of happy. But there's trade-offs. There's always consequences. Choices have consequences, and you can't do everything. And so a lot of the time it's difficult because everyone goes off in different paths, and you're always comparing yourself, and you say, well, like I don't have that. But you seldom see the whole picture. You're seldom able to see the basket of choices that someone else has made. And so I kind of made peace with my bubble. It was kind of a case of these guys are good. But what I realized is and also in the context of coming from South Africa, South Africa.
Trevor, I just want to stop you. I think your mic is making a funny noise.
You talk about the scratching.
Not the scratching. Sorry. Trev?
No worries. So there's kind of, where was I? The
bubble, your friends. We don't see the basket.
Okay, so like our we've made these basket of choices, but there's a whole. South Africa is one of the most unequal countries in the world. For a long time, it was the most, but I think there's a few countries on a Gini coefficient measure that have been more unequal. But the point is that global inequality is the same as the worst country in the world. So we keep and are comfortable with inequality in boxes. We don't care, we don't mind if people are unequal in another box. It's if they're unequal in our box that it matters. And there's only one box. So inequality in South Africa should matter as much to someone in the US or the UK or wherever, or Denmark, as their own boxes. But we kind of excuse it. And it's one of these existential questions South Africans have, like, should I stay or should I go? It doesn't matter if you stay or go. The box is an imaginary thing. That's the thing we destroyed with destroying apartheid. It's like, it doesn't matter where in Africa you come from, so we shouldn't be a xenophobic country. It doesn't matter, like, if you leave South Africa, you can still celebrate Heritage Day. It doesn't matter if you come back. It doesn't matter where you are. Inequality still kind of exists. And I got quite passionate about the idea of universal basic income because there's some hard questions, right? And one of the problems with answering other people's questions is you imposing your worldview on their questions. And some of the way we always want to do things with strings. So if you think of it in a left-right kind of like political framework, like people on the right, what will only help with strings, and people on the left will kind of, feel like people have to have their decisions made for them. And however you want to frame it, it doesn't feel comfortable. But what I was saying is sometimes it's the simplest possible answers. Just give people cash. So Rutger Bregman talks about, like, poverty is not a lack of character, it's a lack of cash. And a lot of the research, when you go into Give Well, which is this whole school of effective altruism led by Peter Singer, and there's been a whole lot of work done on it afterwards, is they're saying that we spend a lot of money imposing our view of how the world should work on other people. So if you think of charity, how much of the money that gets given gets spent on the salaries of the people running the charities, or coming up with the frameworks of how to spend it, or having conferences to discuss the problem, or fly somewhere, or do something. And what they found out is actually one of the most effective ways to help people give them money. So this is Give Well, as an effective altruism organization. They rank charities, which has its own problems.
Sure.
Ranking things and putting numbers on things that shouldn't have problems. It's a whole nother can of worms. But and I agree, there's a charity called Give Directly, and it's my favorite charity, gives money. And you can do this. You can go on to Give Directly site today, and you can sign up to pay a universal basic income for someone in Kenya, Uganda, and a few other countries. Have got a few other pilot projects going. And that money will go directly to someone in absolute poverty. And if you look at a book like Factfulness with Hans Rosling, where he divides the world up into, people who earn less than the bottom billion and the top billion. So he has 4 categories of earning. And it roughly equates to people who are earning less than $2 a day. There's about 1 billion of them. And there's about 1 billion people earning more than $32 a day. And look, there's also ways of, like, what does earning mean? Is it spending? Is it consumption? Just keep it simple. And if the people earning more than $32 a day gave $2 a day to the billion earning less than $2 a day, we would end poverty today. And that's not a hard thing to do. That's the idea of a universal basic income. Universal, everybody. Basic is it gives you, it's like the chess pieces. How are you supposed to play chess without a chessboard and chess pieces? And income, because it's that certainty, it's kind of forever. And so, when you don't know the answer, universal basic income is the most interesting question I've ever come across, because it lets people ask the question. UBI, UBU. That's a little catchphrase there.
So, it's actually beautiful what you said. We're here in Durham, North Carolina, in the States. There is a NGO that is doing a pilot program for a year. They randomly selected 109 people that were formerly incarcerated to give them a basic income of $600 a month to see how it goes. So I can't wait to see the end result of that basic income, and I'm hoping we can actually start doing that a little bit more in our society, because so many people need that, just basically just a step up, a hand up, to help them along their way. And I definitely have to do some more research about that. Those billionaires giving a few dollars, which will not hurt them at all.
Yeah,
Maybe they don't fly to Mars.
yeah, absolutely. But interestingly, like,
Why?
But Trevor's
interestingly, it's
mentioning,
not. It's a billion people earning more than $32, so none of us feel rich. I think that's an
Mhm.
important distinction. We always, the way the world's structured, we never feel like we're earning enough because everybody's living hand to mouth. It's always there's a tendency to always think like there's someone richer than me and it's their problem to solve. And the interesting way with framing it as in the way that I have is or in the way that Hans Rosling has is in my bubble. And this is one of the pushbacks. So I asked in one of my polls, I do polls on LinkedIn like a lot of the time. And in one of the polls, I asked where people are on this. Are you less than $2? Are you 2 to 8, 8 to, 32 plus? And pretty much my whole bubble is 32 plus. And I get in the comments, that's not representative. I know my bubble's not representative. Most people, and this is something that South Africans often hammer Americans on. Everyone goes about, the 1%. Most Americans are in the 1%. But when they're framing it like that, they're talking about America. They're not thinking about the world.
Global,
And
yeah.
if you're American, you are a lucky person. like you're lucky to be American. And I'm not disparaging. I know there's poverty in America, and actually, I
Mhm.
had an experience of that in that time that I wasn't working. And I know there's poverty in the UK. It's hard for South Africans to wrap their head around, but I think there's soft poverty and hard poverty. And one of
sure,
the things that is the easy poverty to solve is when people just don't have cash. The hard poverty is like, okay, we've done that. Why is it still a problem? And then you have to go, why in a rich country does poverty still exist? And those are like hard questions. Poverty in South Africa is not a hard question. We basically got structural Great Depression. You go back to the 30s and things like car guards and stuff like that. There's stories of Germany of young men hanging around cars saying they'll guard your car for you. Are they asking? It's quite threatening. And like these kind of things, South Africa's unemployment rates is what it was in the Great Depression in the US. And they still talk about that. And they still talk about the UK. Sorry, I went on a multiple.
no, it's fine.
It's good. It's
It's
good.
useful. It's good. Just to just to be able to bring the point home. You know, I like your basic income concept that you've just spoken about. It. My question is, why aren't we doing what we need to do to end that level of poverty and give cash? What do you think it is?
Look,
You
again,
said,
it's hard. Like, so the basic income conversation is not me. Like, I'd consider myself as being a basic income activist, and I've gone harder at it when I've had more time. But there's guys like
sure,
Scott Santons who it's a full-time job for him. There's other people who've been crusading. And it's not even a new concept. Richard Nixon almost got it through in the US, and the story of why he didn't is fascinating.
tell
Because it is
us.
a concept that brings the kind of like left and right together.
Together.
It's one where, for the right, like it's one of those things of like it reduces costs. You're just giving stuff there. There's not, and for the left, it's more obvious. You're giving people support, but there's criticism from both sides. The reality is, as it is saying, is how do you practically make this happen? So in practical terms, questions like who pays for it? So even if it's a good idea, like pensions are a good idea, right? But the pensions industry has grown. Like in Australia, the superannuation funds came from an idea. It's taken 30 years. Your point you were making is people love to say, I can solve your problems in 6 months. Yeah, it's exciting if you can solve my problems in a month. That's brilliant. Someone comes to you and says, I can solve problems for your grandchildren. It's suddenly like deflating. Like we
Yeah,
can solve this. There are ways we can solve this. And one of those ways is testing pilot projects, figuring things out. My favorite idea for universal basic income is community wealth funds. So obviously, as someone who proposes capital, and I also like the idea of dynamism, bottom up. I don't like the idea that politicians have to solve our problems. I think if you live in a liberal democracy, you should be able to solve your problems. Like, it's ridiculous in the US, where half the country support the Democrats and say they want universal health care and can afford to pay for it. Half the country don't want it. If the Democrats want universal health care in America, they can have it. They can just need to pay for it. What they want is for everybody to agree to pay for it. And this is one of the problems with charities. Sometimes, like, you ask them, oh, so what do you actually give? No, I don't give, but I think we should all give. So they need someone to come and, sorry, I'm getting carried away.
Oh, no.
I love your passion and your energy.
I'm loving this. So, can you, for those who are unfamiliar, can you talk about the Community Wealth Fund? What it is, how it works?
So a community wealth fund is this idea. I mean, in South Africa, we have a concept of stokvels. So stokvel is a savings club, and there's various kinds of savings clubs. You know, from as simple as you and a couple of friends get together, and instead of each of you opening an account, you trust each other enough. Trust is a key part to actually just get one account, and you all chip in, and you come up with a constitution, and you say how the money's going to be spent, and you meet together and you save. It's often done for like Christmas or birthdays or various ways of school fees. It's a way of like community discipline. It's a way of accountability, holding each other accountable, all sorts of things. And it comes from like a nice melting pot. So it's an Afrikaans word that comes from like the English area of the 1820 settlers, given by like kind of the Xhosa people who were living there in the area. So it's a real melting pot concept. But for me, a community wealth fund is like a stokvel that went to Harvard. Another friend of mine called it. It's the next level. It's taking this concept and saying we can create a fund and we can build a constitution around it, and we can work towards this. So, for example, if you take my concept of the 32-82, and if you said, right, 15 years, and that thing that I said that is unachievable for most people, maybe it's achievable if we do it together. So if you said, right, I will pay $2, I will pay $4 a day into this thing, and $2 will go to the fund, and $2 will go to someone. There's 150 people, so let's keep it small. 75 who need to get money, 75 people who are contributing. For 15 years, 75 people pay $2 a day, universal basic income for the other 75. At the end of those 15 years, you'll have enough capital to sustain that $2 a day to the other people. They might now be in a position to contribute, but also you could then splinter. And now you've got two community wealth funds, or you could increase the level of the basic income. Lots of different combinations. But what I like is setting in place structures that, given time, can evolve. You know, this is the basic, like the key, like, you know, how evolution works of sort of set stuff up that's going to give it time and it's going to work. Because that's the idea is the fundamental idea is we need capital.
Sure.
We need cash for the noise. So like the months when your spending is higher than your income, you need some cash. You need capital so that it can earn money, so that we can spend time on ideas that are fundamentally not money-making ideas. Because one of the big problems we have in a hand-to-mouth world, where we spend everything we earn, is everything we do has to earn.
Yeah.
You know, and so it means I passionately believe that not every good idea is a good business idea. And if you force good ideas to make money, you can kill them. And the only way you can release good ideas that aren't good at making money is by financing them. And so that's the heart of the idea around a community wealth fund, is we need to build capital. How we do that, I'm not going to impose it on you, but I'm going to find 150 people that agree with me. I'm going to start a pilot project, and I hope other people do the same.
Love it. Love it.
I love your idea, actually. I mean, building capital just for the community growth fund is one aspect, but just our listeners need to understand building capital for themselves just helps them on so many levels. I mean, to your point, you know, it gives you options and the freedom to pursue things that are not money driven. And how many people want that? And so few people, actually achieve that. I love you. I love your messaging, actually. I love your passion. I love your uniqueness. I love your craziness. I mean, these three people on the screen, no hair, crazy hair, man bun, are clearly not conformists on a mission to to literally change the world in the ways that we can, right? Well, I hope so.
So why are you
So,
talking about
yeah.
my no hair? Why are you talking about how do you know I'm not sensitive about being bald?
Oh, God, I know you for long enough.
You know,
Sensitivity is not your.
how do you know I don't want a man? How do you know secretly I don't wish I had a man bun?
I'll buy you a wig. Moving on, Trev. What's the next point that you wish to make? So you spent some time, you just spent a fair amount of time in the UK and in South Africa, right? What was your highs and lows in comparison? The reason I'm actually asking you this, most people listening to this talk from South Africa may never really have an opportunity to travel. So allow them to travel through your perspective and your story.
Yeah, like again, that's quite humbling. Is the sense that that's how lucky I was. I didn't leave South Africa for the first time until I was 18, and I mean, other than a brief stop as a 2-year-old in Cape Town, which I don't remember, I actually went to the UK before visiting Cape Town, which is like a foreign country for a Durban boy like myself. Even though I ended up there in the end, and it is interesting, and it's the same even in the US. You speak to people who haven't left like the area that they're from, and it really does open things up. Looking at things, places that you think you know, and then you don't know from another perspective. So I've been lucky enough to go to quite a few places for work, but interestingly, in my mind, and again, it speaks to my privilege, I don't feel like I've been exposed to places dramatically outside my bubble. So I've been to like the
Okay.
US and Canada and Australia and New Zealand, and I spent some time in Europe, but I haven't been to South America and Asia and massive parts of Africa. And and one of the things I did when I was writing is I wrote little blog posts on my blog. There's a bubble on the side that lets you see the posts, and you can see the ones on countries. I did a blog post on every country, so I woke up for about 200 days in a row, writing just on Wikipedia, just read about these different countries. And so even though you can't travel physically, the information's there now just to see like who are these people, like what's the makeup, what's the different perspective. And what I find interesting about that is you think you're the same or the same problems, but there's these subtle changes that completely reframe questions. So you take like some of the heavy difficult questions we grapple with, like in South Africa, decolonization and grappling with like what how we would change the way who's indigenous, like when we don't even have as one of our official languages the languages of people who've been here for thousands of years. But like even as I say it, I get scared because like just even the way I'm talking about it is difficult. But then you go to countries like Suriname, which was colonized by the Dutch, but the makeup of the population is a combination of slave labor and also indentured labor. So
Mhm.
now in South Africa, we don't have a majority of people who were indentured laborers, and we don't have a majority of people who were slave laborers, who were slaves. It was like apartheid, which was its own unique kind of beast. But it's fascinating seeing, and you can see it online. There's ways of reading around these countries and seeing how that's affected their like national conversation, the things that matter to them, how the politics. And so you don't have to travel to get that stuff. You can look at like what's the difference between America and Brazil in terms of how they were affected by the Atlantic slave trade, and like and just the fact that like there wasn't a white majority in America. I mean in Brazil, but there was in America. And you can start looking at all these places with these fake boxes that we've created over time, and you can travel. I've avoided your question, not intentionally. My traveling, going over there, it's amazing. Despite that, I asked a poll the other day on LinkedIn, and I saw like 85% of the people who I'm in my bubble are still South Africans. So it's actually quite hard to dismantle your bubble and get different perspectives.
Sure.
Because even when I go over there, you spend time with South Africans. My wife is British. I met over there, and even there, in South African terms, you'd think of, I'm a white English-speaking South African, so you'd think that I do have mixed back. I always talk about my heritage as being like all the misfits from Europe came here, they threw their keys in a bowl, and I'm what happened. And but the Brits, the British part of that, I think I'm because I think I'm associated with that, and you see how differently my wife thinks about. I'm going to pause because it's hard. That's true, man. Like my surname, you talk about my surname, where does it come from? Basically, my ancestors were stripped of their can name, like the Game of Thrones, and kicked out of Scotland.
I'm sorry.
I'm not
I
Trevor
just
John
love you.
Rhodes.
I mean, the internet has given a lot of people access. There's no doubt about it. From a knowledge, from being able to learn, and from an education perspective, to be able to have to digest information, to be able to work through their lives. But immersing yourself in travel, actually, it's completely, you would have to agree, different to what you can actually extract from the internet. So
Sure.
I think there's
Sure it is. So one of the
value.
things I loved about when I did actually manage to move on from the corporate world, and that wasn't my main work exposures, one of the things I used to do in the model that I was trying to do of cheaper travel is I would go to places. So my wife is an anthropologist, and she was doing she had the Winston Churchill Foundation award where she was able to study libraries in North America, and that's where I had that exposure that I was talking about, poverty in America. She was studying libraries in North America and Northern Europe, and so what I did is I tagged along, and I just went while she would go to the library to study it, I would walk there, and then I would write in a coffee shop along the way, and then I would go. So I wasn't spending money, but I was getting to experience these different places. And that's I think it's one of the nicest periods of my writing in my blog. So I've been writing on my blog for 14 years. And that period where I was able to just sit in different spaces, walk through different things, it just flavored the writing somewhat. And so the example that I talk about with American poverty was, sometimes you do stupid things. You think, oh, South Africa, I'm from South Africa, I don't have to worry about this. And I walked along the I don't know what the name in Chicago, the name of the line is. I wanted to go and see Norman Foster, kind of an architect that built houses in a suburban area. And I thought, I'll go check this out. Because I was walking, I was also training for the Comrades, but that's another story. And I was going along this long routes because I wanted to go quite far out and far back. And I suddenly realized I was stupid because I needed the loo, and there were no places. Everything was locked. There were no public access toilets. It was like an episode of The Wire, like abandoned parking lots, everything burnt out. Everybody was black. I'm from South Africa. That's absolutely not a problem. I'm not, but I'm in America and I'm going, okay, here's apartheid, because there's the black people are still a minority in America, but the whole area is black, which does, clearly it's not mixed. And I walked, and the only public loo I could find, because every loo in this area had like gating and like things about don't give guns to your children, and I'm like, what on earth is going on? And I walk in and I go into a library, and that's the only place that has a loo that I can use. But again, everybody's black, and I'm like, is this an episode of Get Out? Reverse, where is this the right country? What's going on here? And I didn't know it was that bad. I always assumed, people talk about, there's inequality in America and there's separateness, but I didn't think it was straight up coming to Cape Town and where it's the reverse, where you're in these areas and you can't see black people. But anyway, I think again I went off track there. I didn't quite answer your question. But I wouldn't have experienced that without traveling. You're right. I couldn't have read that in Wikipedia. That's one of those things that you have to be there, you know, like you have to be in Edinburgh walking down like during the Hogmanay at the end, and you see like these, like a woman relieving herself in the, you know, in the alley next to everyone because she's so drunk, and you go like, okay, first world country image completely shattered. This is what happens there.
Yeah.
Or like someone asks begging for money in a rich country where you go, okay, these are, I've seen people like this in and one of the worst
It
thoughts
just
that I
opens
have
up your mind, though. Oh,
it
sorry.
does, yeah, it
It
does.
does.
It lets you
It gives you a
see.
different perspective, and
I'm getting the
it also
Friday
just,
sun here.
oh, we can see you moving. I thought
Sorted.
it was your jive, a Friday jive, actually moving back and forth. Yeah, it just kind of opens your mind and your perspective. But I wanted you to share that, your story. So thank you for that. Do you want to share another one, or is that okay now?
No, I'm good. I could go with these diatribes. I guess the interesting thing is then you have to get more conscious about your traveling. So it's easy to go, but like what's the bigger thing? So when you know, I realized I hadn't traveled around Africa, for example. So I'm from South Africa, and one of the interesting things is I get really triggered, and it's a fairly common South African trigger is when people say, "Oh, you're from Africa." And it's like it's a big place, right? Or like you simplify it down to this. You don't even say which country you're from. And when I tell people I'm from South Africa, they go, "Oh yeah, no, I went to Somalia, or I went to Senegal," and you're like, sure.
That's
So like the
nice.
equivalent of like, you know, like I'm from it's like saying I'm from Athens. Oh, I've been to London. Thank you. Because do you know that Berlin is as far from Beijing as Tunis is from Cape Town? So that's just how big Africa is. So when I realized, like in my experience with Africa, I've been to Namibia, I've been to Botswana. I'm running out. You know, I hadn't left South Africa till I was 18. So what we did is my wife and I we went to Morocco, and you
Oh, it's
realize
beautiful.
just how it's so different. So just but also the idea that it's Africa, but you know it's next to Spain, and it just the flavors are so dramatically different. So if you're saying if you wanted to unpack what it means to be African, which is something that we do as South Africans a lot, it's, you know, the major spoken languages are Arabic, are French, and Swahili, and when you just see how diverse a continent it is, and how different it is from my experience, and I love that experience, but I still have only just nibbled at what it means to be African.
Okay, we get you. We love your perspective. I have another question. How are we doing for? What is your perspective or concept on wealth? How would you define that?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I think it comes for me. It comes down to decision making and kind of agency and comfort that you have. Like it's a release from comparison. And you know, one of the things that I don't like and I've never liked is things like performance reviews and the concept of meritocracy, and which is, I get the irony, like you know, the things I've studied are all about quantifying stuff, and I think the really juicy stuff is the qualitative stuff. That's the stuff that I like. You know, that's the stuff that the hard questions, and so whatever that is for people, you know, there's this concept. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, however you pronounce his surname, is the guy who came up with flow, or positive psychology, like where, you know, psychology is normally all about like things that are wrong with you, and Martin Seligman and a few of these other
Yeah.
guys sort of came up with the concept of authentic happiness and all these, and it's finding flow, which is where,
Can you say it?
there we go.
I got a love letter from him, by the way.
Very good. And did it make you authentically happy?
No. Because no, my son. I got this for my son actually. So he studied psychology. Happiness is an inside job. It's not
Yeah,
regarding the
complete.
external factors. It's not anything. So my happiness stems from me, not seeking validation, not seeking approval, being content with what I have instead of comparisons. I mean, that's the killer. Let's be real, Trev. Most of us, and especially a lot of South Africans, are always, and I think it's a global issue, not just South Africans, looking externally for happiness. You're never going to find
Global.
it. It
That's a
has to be
global issue.
here.
Yeah.
I have, sorry, um, where was I going with this? I kind
No,
of get lost in
I
my life.
I mentioned the authentic happiness. I was talking about flow and the concept of how you find something that's pushing you enough that that you're feeling challenged, but it's not pushing you so hard that you feel anxious. And that flow, that moment that we get, which is kind of like an active meditation, is very different for all of us. And so when you say what wealth is, I think wealth is flow. Wealth is that point where you have found what it is that is your thing, and that you're able to do it. And that's completely different for all of us. And so I hammer at these concepts of endurance, resilience, creativity, and there's different ways of framing the same concept. Like, so for me, endurance is about that ability to dig deep, like to go when you're being really pushed and you aren't actually creating an income or anything like that, but you've still got the resources to push on and to go through and to work towards your goal, to go through those periods of deep creativity. Like you think about like life is not all about being happy. Often the greatest moments are melancholy and sadness, regret, like looking at something that you did wrong. That's the juice. That's where
And the
art comes from.
growth.
And you
Yeah.
the growth, and you
Growth.
want to revel in that stuff. And that's that endurance comes from that. And then resilience for me is space. So it's literally it's 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 being able to adjust and accommodate and go through these periods, but both endurance and resilience are there to allow creativity and meaning. And I'm really one of those people who believes that life doesn't have meaning. You give it meaning,
Create meaning.
and you
Absolutely.
create meaning. And so for me, wealth as a concept is that really that ability for us all to just be getting the juice out of life.
That's good.
I agree.
Go ahead, Charmaine.
No, it's fine. For
You
me,
know,
I
I
like
go
I
ahead.
I anchor wealth. So no, I'm not even going to go there. It's not my place. I just wanted to hear more about you because it's a combination of everything actually. So my W is wisdom, my E is equity, is stake, but also fairness, and my A is assets, right? And you are your primary asset. You create meaning in your life. My L is liability, but also love, and my T is time. The most non-replenishable asset that people waste, time. And my L is, I'd said liability, time, and my H is health and happiness. So I just look at it from that perspective. That's what wealth. It's so much more than money. And you spoke to it beautifully, Trev. I just love you. You made me laugh so much. Do you have more questions for this amazing man?
No, I will say because I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So, Trev, you're on a world stage, and you get to land one message to the world. What would that message be?
um that's a big question. I mean, just do you like just do you as best you can, like, and good luck. Life is complicated, ambiguous, random. I don't have the answer, no one does, there's no adults in the room. Just crack on and cope. Like, you're enough, you're okay. uh, just yeah, no one knows. Just try and listen and get feedback and be open and then try again. And small achievable goals that add up. I think that's the way forward.
Oh, I love that. Well, thank you so much for spending time with us and sharing your wisdom. Really, really appreciate it, Trev. Oh, my boyfriend Silhouette, thank you for holding the space with me. And to the people that come out and listen to us, love and light to you. And thank you for being on this journey with us.
All right, everyone take
Thank you so
care.
much. Thanks for your
Cheers,
time, Ed.
everyone.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you.